Իմը նույնը Paula է, ես Ուրուգվայից եմ, ես հասկանում շատ քիչ հայերեն, բայց ես ուսուցիչ UWC Dilijանում։ When I was 17 years old, I understood that I was coming to a very special place when I was told that I won a scholarship to study in the United World College Dilijan in Armenia. When my father was at a restaurant and he was sharing this same story with someone, and out of nowhere, someone heard that I was coming to Armenia, someone who was Armenian himself, an Armenian Uruguayan person. He shows up with all his enthusiasm saying, I'm Armenian, I've been there, I need to show your daughter everything that I've learned. And as soon as I knew I was meeting a random person that was a complete stranger, who was showing me pictures from his time in Armenia. I remember that he was showing me the Khrachka, and he would tell me you would see this everywhere, and he was explaining many different details of the country. And I was like, wow, what kind of place am I going that someone who was born and raised in the complete other side of the world has this enthusiasm to share about his country that is also partly his country because he's Armenian Uruguayan, and spend 2 hours of his life just telling a teenager about this country. So that was a very special moment that I understood that this was a different type of place. I would say that the average knowledge that an average Uruguayan has about Armenia is that any surname ending in Yan is from an Armenian person, that the Armenian genocide happened in 1915. Maybe they don't know the exact year, but they are aware of it. And they tend to think that lahmacun is Armenian because it's a food that the Armenian people brought to Uruguay. So that was my basic knowledge about Armenia. Plus, I knew that the forget-me-not flower is associated with the Armenian genocide because that was 2016, so 2015 was really present in my mind. But I think I learned a lot in that encounter of 2 hours because I also began to understand a bit of the feeling of the Armenian diaspora. I remember this person was telling me it was such a shock to be there and see how everyone is similar to me and how that completes my sense of identity. And I understood how relevant it was. It provided the Armenian genocide a different sense of meaning. Up till that point, I understood the Armenian genocide as something that had happened in the past and that was a tragedy. But in that moment, I began to get acquainted, to understand part of how that event still affects the people today, how his identity was not complete until he managed to visit Armenia and to connect with that part of himself, in addition to learning a lot of interesting facts about the different monasteries and the geography of Armenia that I still need to remember. But I think that getting in contact with that sense of identity was key. When people ask me about my knowledge of Armenian language, I tend to say that it's enough to impress people and deduce meaning, but not enough to actually communicate. People are loud in Latin America, but I never quite understood. The Armenian language at first sounded aggressive. And I was like, why are they fighting? Then I understood that maybe what sounded like someone not insulting me, but being angry might have been just a grandma opening up their house and wanted to share what they baked, or a situation like that, which there are many. But honestly, my first impression was like, okay, what is going on? It was first confusion, and then I understood. I started to understand a bit more of how the language was working and how that was not a synonym of aggression or anything similar. I also continued learning Armenian in university, which is also a great example of the connection between Armenia and Uruguay. There are Armenian lessons in Uruguay. Technically, I took an intermediate Armenian course. Here I learned a lot more about Armenian culture. Yes, I think that I'm a competent Armenian dancer. And the proof of that is that after I graduated, I went back to Uruguay and I learned a lot about, I got in contact with the AGBU, I went to their end of year party, and I was dancing in the AGBU end of year party, and it was fantastic. But so I think that it got that experiential part of it, right? Much like UWC is experiential learning, I think living here is that experiential learning about Armenian culture, is understanding how Armenians feel when they go to the genocide memorial, how there's a certain way of behaving and entering and being around the monastery. I think that Armenians' relationship to their own country is fascinating. I don't think I am able to describe it, but it's very, I'm very amazed by how no matter how many conflicting feelings Armenian might have towards their country, towards whatever situation they're living, or anything that might be happening in the moment, the love for the country still prevails to an extent that I don't think I have ever seen before. The love for the culture, for the importance of preserving traditions, of defending the right of being Armenian is fascinating. After I graduated as a student in UWC Dilijan, I decided to continue my education at home. So I pursued a teaching degree in philosophy at home, while one of the first courses that I took was also Armenian language, and while I was also volunteering for the UWC movement at home. So although I left Armenia, I never left the UWC movement and my contact with UWC Dilijan. I became part of the alumni council of the school, and I was always engaged in this education. And obviously, as I started to be a teacher, one of my dreams was always to teach at a UWC because of how much I believe in this educational force, and also because I wanted to be the teacher that I had to some extent. I wanted to give back what I had received. So the job opening here they needed a philosophy teacher when I was about to become a philosophy teacher, basically. So it was perfect timing, and I said I need to go for this opportunity, and the school welcomed me, and that's how I ended up coming back right after I graduated. Here I teach philosophy, but I also teach theory of knowledge, which is a subject that is specific to the IB diploma, and I'm also involved in a lot of different extracurricular activities and support for the students. Soon I'm going to take Team Armenia for the first global challenge, a robotics competition that brings teams from all around the world, and it's a great privilege to take our school's team that will represent Armenia. But I am also the go-to person when they need an extra supervisor for outdoor trips. So I go with them skiing and rafting and hiking and caving. And I am that moral support that I also needed when I was a student. I support a lot the Latin American students and bring that little feeling of home when they need a meal from home or just to speak their native language. And I try to be also an advocate for our students to learn more about Armenia. I like to think that I also play a role in reminding our international students of how important it is to understand the culture that we are immersed in and being respectful towards it. One of my students is leading a sustainability project of educating Dilijan youth in sustainability. So this is something that happens in our campus as the children come to the greenhouse and to our facilities, and it's a growing project. But I think that ultimately it contributes to Dilijan as a town, as the new generation gets to learn more about sustainability, gets to learn about what we do here. So yeah, their goal is, since UWC is very focused on a sustainable development, their goal as students here is to promote that focus in sustainability among the Dilijan community. when I was finishing my teaching degree, I was teaching to one group of students, and a documentary came out. We Are Our Mountains, an Armenian documentary about the Artsakh 2020 war. And at that point, I thought, my students need to watch this. My students need to learn about this. We are studying philosophy and human rights. This is something that they need to learn about the communities that are part of the country, because the Armenian community is part of Uruguay. So I got in touch with the producer. I couldn't take them there, but I ended up going there and then sharing that story with my students as well. So I know for a fact that I will continue being an ambassador for Armenia as I go home, because I think that is a key point, especially where I'm coming from, for Uruguayan people to continue learning about this community that has been so vital in our country as well, and that is really a story of two countries, that solidarity between two countries, and two countries being very distant and very small, but very connected and very helpful to each other. I think that all UWC Dilijan graduates become Armenian by choice. Maybe we don't have any other choice in a way, not in the sense that we are forced to that, but rather in the sense that after spending 2 years here, or in my case, it will be 4 years here in total, it's impossible not to absorb the Armenian culture, not to be moved by Armenian history, by the Armenian people, by the Armenian hospitality. I think that we embody a very different type of Armenianness, probably, because obviously it's not the same shared experience as of being Armenian, but I think that the term Armenian by choice is the right term for this kind of experience. Because we're not Armenian by blood or by being born here, but we share a lot of the feelings of love towards this country and respect towards it. I think that Ruben and Veronica have they have made an enormous contribution to the UWC movement at large, but UWC Dilijan specifically. And for UWC Dilijan, I think that they've connected the school with the world in a different way that if we were any other UWC not founded by the two of them, we wouldn't be. I remember being here as a student and Nubara Feyan giving a talk, and many other, I think that Ruben and Veronica's role in the non-profit sector, in connecting, but also in the entrepreneurship sector, of connecting the school, for the school not to be only a school, but also a school connected with the world. I remember Ruben is the person that I heard the term glocal for the first time, and I think that defines a lot of his vision. He wanted us to have an impact in this community, but also to have a sense of what's going around us. So I remember a lot of different important stakeholders coming to our school, speaking to us having, I believe the Aurora Dialogues were hosted or part of the Aurora Dialogues were hosted in our school when I was a student, and that was an enormous chance of learning from people that are doing amazing things in the world right there at such a young age. So you're not only getting an educational experience for 11th and 12th grade, you are connected with the entire world when you haven't even gotten to university. I define my experience here as a great opportunity to try new things and to challenge myself in the many different ways that I had never tried before. I describe UWC Dilijan as a perfect environment where you're supported and encouraged to get out of your comfort zone. There is, of course, a very academic part of this, but the things that I mentioned first when I talk about my experience here are how I learned how to swim, how I skied for the first time, hiked for the first time, in general be around the mountain for the first time, appearing in a theater play, And this kind of things where I got to explore many other areas of my identity with a lot of support from my peers and from the wonderful teachers that were there to give that word of encouragement when I didn't believe in myself. Our school holds a lot more than diversity. Of course, national diversity is part of that, but the socioeconomic diversity in our school, the diversity of cultures, the diversity of perspectives is deeply rooted, and the identity of our students is one of the greatest treasures that our school has, and that I'm just amazed at it. The learning experience is it's unique and it's completely different. It would be a lot more boring if it was just us teaching them. They are learning from each other, and that's part of the essence of UWC. I believe in the UWC mission, and the UWC mission is to make education a force to unite people, nations, and cultures for peace and a sustainable future. And in a world where so many conflicts are going on, where we see so much polarization, when we see such a lack of understanding each other, the potential that UWC has to promote this intercultural understanding, to think things in a different way, to understand that, to understand each other, really, to understand where everyone is coming from, to promote a healthy way of going through discussions, to understand that we are not here only for ourselves, that this is not about individualism, this is about doing something better for the world, for our community, and having students with enormous potential, with that willingness to learn from that country that maybe they've only heard bad things about, or from that country that they had no idea that existed. I think that is very powerful and needs to be continued.